Welcome back to the Mackem in the Middle podcast after another Sunderland League game, another away game and another showing on Sky Sports, which did end in defeat 1-0 away to Middlesbrough in what was just another ordinary championship game and certainly nothing more than that. First and foremost, John, we'll obviously get onto the game, everything that happened, obviously a few talking points, but, after a defeat, the main one is usually, we've dropped 3 points. Was the performance there? What could we have done better? But the one talking point from yesterday happened before the game, and it was obviously Ross Stewart, who dropped out of the starting 11 because he picked up, I think it was a calf injury in the warm-up. Obviously, he missed the game, and Tony Mowbray, in his conference after the game, obviously he hasn't had a scan yet. He's going to go for a scan, and we'll be able to assess the kind of severity of the injury and see how long he's going to be out for, but the immediate reaction didn't sound good. Missing him, not just for the game yesterday, but for however long he is out, is not just a big blow, but the biggest blow for Sunderland.
Yes, it's massive. We all know how we play. I think that the telling thing for me is it must have hit the rest of the squad, like a big sort of thunderbolt, because you could tell they just weren't, I can't believe there were so many poor performances from everybody. He's a massive part of how we play. He's a massive part of how we set up, how we defend, how we attack. And he's probably in the form of his life, hence we're clamouring for him to get a new contract. But yeah, it shell-shocked everybody. There's probably a frustration of why have we not got any backup plans, and that's tactical wise from the coaching staff, regardless if the manager's gone, because there should have been still, action plans in place that if it does happen, because ultimately it could happen.
It's been the one worry for every Sunderland fan for the past 6 to 9 months. What's going to happen if Stewart gets injured? He's finally got injured, and even after all that planning, after all that thinking, after all that worrying, we haven't actually got a plan for it.
No, exactly, and that's, again, that probably goes to a bit of naivety, thinking that he's fit as a fiddle. Again, Speakman can come out with his little, interviews and his little press releases, but ultimately, we needed someone in that position. Yes, all right, we probably had irons in the fire, but for us not to find, somebody who can come in, obviously no one is going to come in and fit the bill. I think we're all going to agree that, because Ross Stewart is a fantastic player. And what he does for us is very sort of niche in his way. No one can really replicate that, but to not have any other strikers available, you can't. Yes, the new Man United kid's come in for, he's signed for a lot of money to Man United, but are we going to put the pressure on him to come in and do the job? Obviously, Ellis Sims, personally, I think he hasn't been great for sort of three or four games now, and it's definitely looked a little bit lost last night. So it's obviously everyone's worst nightmare, and I think ultimately it did cost us the game yesterday. Like I said, the players were shell shocked, and I think if we did have Stewart, it's a different game, because they weren't great at all, and ultimately it knackers it up. Obviously, going forward, it's going to be best case scenario. I still think it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks before if it is the best news, and if it's not the best news, then we are in a bit of trouble, I think.
Yeah. Obviously, Dan, people talk about planning, like John mentioned there, and the recruitment side of it certainly not being the best, because we said the entire transfer window, probably even said last January and potentially even the summer before that we need a kind of contingency plan. If Stewart does get injured, who's going to step in, who's going to do the role in the team that he does? We didn't do that. We haven't brought anyone in to kind of play like for like. But on the other side of the planning idea, it is harder for, Tony Mowbray. He's been here, 4 or 5, less than a week, basically, for him to have come up with a plan 10 minutes before kick-off, now that he's lost his key player, to be able to change the way Sunderland play so quickly.
Yeah, of course, and this is what I was saying last night. It doesn't really matter how long your manager's been in there. If your main focal point of the team drops out with injury 10 minutes before the game, that's your whole week of preparation out the window. and it's especially hard with Tony Mowbray because he doesn't even know how the players play. He didn't want to change anything on Wednesday against Rotherham because we were playing really well, and it paid off. We won 3-0, and he would have done the same again today. But because of that Stewart injury, we lost that really main focal point. And the fact he doesn't know our players makes it even harder because now we're sort of expecting Sims to play as a lone striker, which he hasn't done all season, and then play Patrick Roberts basically as the number 10 off his shoulder. And Patrick Roberts hasn't even had many game minutes this season. And when he has come on, it's been on the wing or he's not looked great. So it was a big task for him to step up and fill those boots of Ross Stewart. But in general, we can argue that we've pointed out that we needed a second striker or a backup striker for Ross Stewart that's like for like. But there's a massive shortage of strikers in the world at the moment. Never mind a striker that can drop in deep, pick up the ball, create things in the midfield like Stewart does, but also has the pace to get in behind as well. There's very rarely any strikers that can actually do a blend of both, and we really saw that yesterday with what we missed. Ellis Sims is a great at bullying his man and like holding the ball up, bringing the ball down, and giving and playing give and goes, but he doesn't have the pace to get in behind like Stewart does. So we can argue as much as we want that we should have had another striker in the cards, but because there's not many on the market available, or the ones that are available are either very expensive or they don't want to be a third choice striker. So it's a bit like we could throw stupid money at a striker, but would they actually want to come and be third choice? I mean, you could argue that they would. That's their job to fight to be first choice, but at the start when they come in, they're going to be a third choice striker. So it's not great for them if they've been playing first team football regularly, getting 90 minutes. So it's a bit difficult, and there's, like I said, there's not many that really can replicate Stewart anyway. So I can't really see anyone who we would or could have brought in that would be able to do the job that he does, especially because he's a taller man as well. So he can bully those defenders, get on the end of crosses, etc., whilst getting in behind. So it's a very difficult one for us.
Yeah. And obviously, there is some leeway for the game yesterday, John, because like I said, if you lose, like I say, your key player, your best player, the most important player to the team, we've mentioned what he does for the team, not just scoring goals, but, if Sunderland are struggling to get the ball out of defence, he is the focal point, get it up to him, he'll hold it up and we play from there. He drops deep into a kind of midfield role, you pick the ball up and link it up and we attack from there. Not having that is going to have a big impact on the game, especially when it happens 10 minutes before. But with how long Ross Stewart's been at the club and how long some of these players have played with him and trained with him, even going back to under Alex Neil, you'd think that players would still have an idea how to play without him. And based on the game yesterday, we just looked lost for ideas without being able to just play it into Stewart and kind of hope for the best.
Yeah, we did. We did look very lost, and I think we were, maybe it was our own downfall. When the centre backs have got the ball and sometimes we're pressed, we have got that focal point of Stewart running the channels or dropping in, and that is an out ball a lot of the time. And as soon as you take that out, it's a case of right, well, we're going to lump it anyway. And like Sims isn't going to hold the ball like Ross Stewart does, so you have to accept that. So then obviously we try and play through the lines, and there was just so many poor performers. We probably go right through the team. I thought first half Dan Neil was atrocious. As much as I love him, he couldn't string like one simple pass. We probably get onto Jack Clark. Just we expect him to. After what he done Wednesday, should be on cloud nine. Didn't really do anything. And what he did do is, how many balls did he hit out of play just easily? Patrick Roberts has been fighting for an opportunity, to have a place in the team, and gets in the team and probably out of position a little bit, but just sort of, looked lost. And I think you can put it just down to, it was just a bad night all round, and it does show you how heavily we rely on Ross Stewart. And obviously, I get Dan's point, but I was probably more of a case of just getting. I know it's easy to say, even someone from League One, just a big, sort of lump who's probably happy to accept that he's not going to be, first and second choice, especially when you play two strikers. You need that third one. Obviously, we went for Broadhead still. We needed him, and then the club thought, well, we don't need, they've gone down the route of not needing someone. So, that's the frustration now, because I think if we did have someone else to play in that position, although it's very tunnel vision to play the same way, because I do think we need to mix it up. I think if we had those strikers, we still could, we'd have got a good result last night. I think, if Stewart played, and maybe if we had another focal point, no one's going to be as good as Ross Stewart. We know that. But I think it's still, it was the start of our downfall. But yeah, the rest of the team as well, barring one or two, were really poor.
Yeah. And obviously, Ross Stewart's injury, Dan, wasn't the only one that happened yesterday. Dennis Serkin also went off injured in the second half. And obviously, like I say, we'll get onto the game and the performance and everything about that shortly. But obviously, he went off injured, and two positions that people kind of looked at in the transfer window, and it continued to linger, and it went down at the last minute, and we didn't end up bringing anyone in, was obviously striker. Like we've already mentioned, we kind of thought we were short up there. That's starting to kind of show its true colours now. And then the other one was at centre-back. Obviously, Van Heck was kind of targeted for a large part of the window. He looks like, well, he is staying at Brighton, and he's going to feature for them in the Premier League. You're also looking at full-backs with Dennis Serkin now injured. If we stay with the same formation, same kind of style, you've got Alessi, who can play as a left-sided centre-back. He's left-footed. He likes to drive forward with the ball. He can pass. But we also don't have that left-back position at all if we were to switch to a back four. So again, it's just shown that whilst I think the recruitment has been fairly good in the window, and obviously we'll see more of the players as the season goes on, the two areas that we were short in have now been exploited, and it could be a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone highlighted this when when the transfer window first opened. The two real areas we need to bolster. And for me, Serkin is arguably almost as big as an injury as Ross Stewart is, because Serkin and Clark really link up well on that left-hand side. Serkin bombs forward and he creates a lot of goals. As a centre-back, he creates a lot of goals and chances because he drives forward, and one of our midfielders sit in for him. So I think he's a huge miss because he's got that pace, he's got that tenacity and that skill to get forward and to beat men. And also he's very good at defending as well, which I think when we first got him and towards the end of last season and maybe start of this season, we were sort of seeing that maybe he wasn't the greatest, but he had a rest and he came back and he's looked better than ever, the best he's played. And we've got a really quality player there, but now we're injured. Now he's injured, and then obviously we got Dan Ballard, who's injured as well. We're really lacking in that centre back department. Like you said, really, we've only got two fullbacks as well. We had Serkin, we had Trey Hume. Gooch is a makeshift right back that has come in and done the job for us. So, God forbid Gooch gets injured because he's playing a lot of minutes regularly. We only have one actual fullback, which is Trey Hume, and he's had no minutes. Granted, he's looked all right when he's come on, but he's still not had much experience with us. So it is a worry, especially with Stewart going out. I can see us going to a four-back formation, which is where I guess you would expect Alessi to come in or Trey Hume to go left back, which is unnatural for him. So I think if the club haven't started already, they really need to be looking at January targets. And I guess our only saving grace this year is that the World Cup is in November, so we get a month break there, where hopefully all of our injuries can come back in the middle of that World Cup period and then get fit for the season starting again in December.
Yeah.
So, I guess in a normal season, we'd be really worried because that Christmas period and the run up to it is crucial for a season. You can either really make or break your season in that period of time between November and January alone. So in a normal season, I think we'd panic more. And our saving grace this year is the World Cup, but we don't know what the board were thinking. We can't really say what their strategy was, but I think every single fan and their dog understood and realized the issues we had, and everything that we said could happen has come true. So it's going to be a real testament to the board to see, have they actually played the card right of the transfer window, because now it's up to Tony Mowbray to get a starting 11 out that can change a game. Because as well, last night, if you looked at our bench, granted we got a couple of new signings to come in and start to get on the bench, but our bench, if we need a goal, we've got nothing on the bench to really chase a game and make something happen. So there's a lot of things that we really need to look carefully at and think about how we're going to attack the next couple of months, because I would be shocked if we didn't get another injury in the next couple of months till November. So it's going to be a huge make or break period for the board, and a real big tough task for Tony Mowbray, who's now really got to knuckle down and understand the squad and get a plan B and a plan C going, whether that's a new formation, whether that's, I don't know, playing Jack Clark at striker back where he used to play, and then bringing Amad Diallo into the left hand side. But yeah, it's down to see what Tony Mowbray has to offer and what he really can do with this squad.
Yeah. So we're getting into the game now, John, and just before we do, in terms of the lineup, 15 minutes before kick-off at least, it was unchanged from the win against Rotherham. No real surprises there, and obviously Patrick Roberts eventually came in for Ross Stewart, which meant a slight change in formation, but performance-wise, game-wise, first kind of 15, 20 and probably 25 minutes, Sunderland just didn't look a shadow of themselves as they have in previous games. You know, you look at the Rotherham game, Norwich, even Sheffield United for large parts. You know, we're getting on the ball, moving the ball quickly, getting up the pitch, and we look dangerous going forward. Whereas yesterday, again, especially in them first 20, 25 minutes, it did improve as the game went on. But even when we were going forward, bar one chance, which obviously we'll get onto with Pritchard, we just never looked dangerous at all.
No, we didn't. You know, we all saw it. It was really poor all round. You know, I think, you know, there's probably a couple of things to that. I think obviously the Ross Stewart thing, you know, we've said it probably has some sort of psychological effect on them. I certainly think that, obviously myself. And then you've got to look at the argument of, is it a derby, is it not a derby? I think they treated it like one. The atmosphere was rocking. I think they sort of got stuck into us and won the first and second balls, which is really important. And if you get your home crowd, same as us when we're at home, if you get the crowd on side, there's a massive momentum there. And we just looked, we were late. Case in point is, Gooch's tackle in the first half. He's just so late. And normally those are the types of things that he mops up quite easily. And saying about Dan Neil, who can't string a pass, it's, normally he's probably one of the best passers, that we've had at the club for a long time. And it just, first, I'd say most of the half, to be fair, it was really, really poor. And, I put that down to a few things, but it's not what we're expecting of. Obviously the press helps, again, going back to Ross Stewart, he leads the press. And if, Ellis Sims, bless him, is not Ross Stewart, and his press isn't nowhere near as effective as Ross Stewart. So, we're almost were on the back foot, from the get-go.
Yeah. And obviously, just before Middlesbrough took the lead, which again we'll get onto in a second, Sunderland had the best chance of the game, throughout the 90 minutes, really. Certainly Sunderland's best chance, and outside of the Middlesbrough goal, probably the only other chance in the game. It was the first time that Sunderland really went forward. Nice little bit of play from Roberts to win it back off Matt Clark. Played into Sims. Sims plays it into Pritchard in the box. It's one of them that, when you're watching on TV, it probably looks a lot easier than it actually is. But, a player with the quality that Pritchard has, the amount of time he had, he could have took a second touch and put it in the bottom corner. that is a chance that, especially in the Championship, where it's a game of fine margins, Dan, you absolutely have to put that in the back of the net.
Yeah, of course, and you'd expect a seasoned veteran like Pritchard to bury that. I think any other day he does score that, and that's really the turning point of our game, because if we score that, I don't really see us.
It's complete. If we score that, I think we're going to win the game, because, like John says there, especially in a game that Middlesbrough fans will class as a derby, which it isn't, but there we go. If Middlesbrough go 1-0 down, they haven't had a good start of the season, the frustration will creep in, the atmosphere will be a bit flat, and
Well,
obviously that is a big thing for fans. If Sunderland take the lead there, the fans turn on the players lack a bit of confidence, Sunderland go on, maybe get a second, and it's a completely different game.
That's it. And you saw defensively, other than the goal, we were quite structured, we were quite solid. I think if we score that game, if we score that chance, it is a completely different game. Because fair credit to Roberts, he showed how to break Middlesbrough down. All you have to do is run at them with a bit of pace, and it scares them. It shakes them apart, and we can tear them apart. Two passes split their whole defence and midfield open. Roberts wins the ball back, plays it straight to Sims, and he plays it through to Pritchard, who's through on goal with no defenders around him. So they were very easy to break down. We just didn't have that pace, and we didn't have that sort of, I'd say, desire. There was no desire to break the team down and to hit them hard and hit them fast, which is what carried out through the whole game. And yeah, like I said, you'd expect Pritchard, with someone who's been in the Premier League and done it at the highest level for years, to bury that chance, and it just epitomised the rest of the rest of the night for us. I think especially we controlled the second half completely, and parts of the first half, although our passing was sloppy and our end product was really, really poor. We could easily control the game. We had most of possession. We were passing the ball around sideways and backwards for the whole 97 minutes. So we get that goal. We control the game. We could dictate it. We could play it at our tempo. We could up the tempo or slow the tempo down, depending on how we wanted to play. But then we had that lapse of concentration that allowed them to score probably 10 minutes later, and it completely flipped the game. And got that stadium going, because, to be fair, the Middlesbrough fans, they were loud and they got behind the team. So it's one of those, if we could shut them up early, which we had the chance to, we would have taken over and we would have easily won that game. But they did it on their ends. 10 minutes later, they controlled the game. They controlled the stadium noise. They controlled that atmosphere, and the players got right behind that. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, obviously it was Middlesbrough that took the lead, John, and it was a goal that, again, don't think this one was necessarily a mistake. Could we do better with it? Probably in a few instances. Obviously, the first one is from the cross from Ryan Giles. Could Gooch get closer to his man, stop the cross potentially? The ball comes in, it kind of goes past O'Nien, and it's Riley McGree who's in the middle of him and Bart, and he gets a touch on it and ends up putting it under Patterson. And I think it was actually O'Nien that got a excellent last-ditch tackle in, which ended up probably helping McGree actually score the goal in the end, which obviously is slightly unfortunate. But again, it's just one of them things that defensively we could have been a bit more solid for that goal. Again, I mentioned the closing down from Gooch to stop the cross. Getting first to the ball. Obviously, McGree got there in between the two defenders. I don't think it's a mistake, but it's a one that essentially, had we actually had a centre-half playing there, would probably be avoided.
Yeah, you could say that. In fairness, though, to Luke O'Nien, he's been fantastic there, and it's probably his best position. I think the thing for me that really, really frustrates me is we let people cross it into the box, continuously, and it's not just this game; it's a catalogue of games. There's not enough done to stop the cross, because the cross is ultimately what causes the problem. it creates chaos. Obviously, does the keeper come? Does he not come? What the defenders do, they mark, and they sort of pull us, all over the place. And that's every single team. So my frustration would be stop the crosses coming in. Double up down on the wings, get Gooch and Clark back in, and put it to a back five and stop them. Stop those crosses coming in, because that's ultimately where it comes from. There wasn't too many mistakes in it. Obviously, it probably could be avoided, but it's just one of those things. And on the balance of play, they probably deserved it. Obviously 09 tries to tackle, but ultimately just not successful that time.
Yeah, and obviously after that goal, like we said, Dan, the atmosphere changes. Sunderland, well, end up chasing the game, and it's a completely different game for both teams because Middlesbrough winning. They don't have as much pressure to go forward. Sunderland need to start throwing bodies forward to get the goal. And to be honest, I don't think it was too much of a kind of blow to Sunderland defensively, even when they had to throw more people forward, because I don't think Middlesbrough actually looked too dangerous offensively. But Sunderland, like we've said before, we've talked about crosses. I couldn't name one cross that went into the box that actually found a Sunderland player. Jack Clark, I think he put 3, possibly 4 crosses out of play from good positions that on another day could probably end up in a hat-trick of goals for whoever was in the box. And obviously you go back to the Rotherham game where very similar positions, he gets the ball, puts a good ball into the box and we score from it. But again, just the delivery, the final pass, the movement in the final third, just none of it was there yesterday.
No, we were really, really second best to everything yesterday. Jack Clark is someone you'd expect to put a peach of a ball in. Gooch as well recently has been putting phenomenal crosses in. But the crosses either went straight to the keeper's hands, they didn't come off the ground, or they went straight out for a corner, or even sometimes a throw-in at the other end. And I think as well, what you saw is there was no player, even if we did have the ball in the wide areas, there was no players bombing into the box. A lot of the time, Ellis Sims was on the edge of the box or around the D, and we had no one actually in the box to be able to cross the ball into. And when we did have players in there, the ball was just absolutely shocking. And you are going to get that in football games. You are going to get bits of inconsistency and times where a cross is shambolic. But I mean, the way it went yesterday, I've never seen anything like it. For all the possession we had, I think we were pushing 70% possession. We did absolutely nothing with it. And you saw so many times yesterday as well, the ball would get played out from Pato to Luke 09, who would drive forward 30, 40 yards and just have no one trying to move to get the ball and to make something happen. Everyone was just stood still. And it made the Borough defence and the Borough midfield just be able to pick us apart like it was nothing. All they had to do was stand on the man and they would intercept the ball. So that's another thing. Like I said, we didn't have that tenacity. We didn't have that cutting edge we normally have where we can break a team apart. We had some nice triangles going sometimes, but then the final ball in that triangle would just go straight to their player. There were so many times where we had the ball at the back and we just passed it straight across our box or straight across the our goal face 20, 30 yards out, and a couple of times that Borough striker almost got on the end of it. Like it's been a long time since I've seen backwards and sideways passing for us, and half the time we couldn't even do it well. I'm just looking at the stats here. We doubled the in passes. We were pushing 70% possession, and we had nothing to show for it. Absolutely nothing to show for it. So it was just an off performance from everyone. I don't think there was really one player in that team that looked comfortable or looked really good. Really, even Pato looked a bit wobbly with some of their shots, which I thought should have been fairly simple saves. The parry went straight to the 6-yard line rather than out for a throw-in or whatever. But it's just an off day. It just shows the characters that I guess we need to build still. We've got a young team. They've never experienced a rivalry like that before. They've probably never realised what an atmosphere like that could do to you. You could say how much it doesn't affect you, but then when you're on the pitch, it might affect you. So there's a lot of factors that could go into it, and we just need to build them up a lot more and get them used to that sort of hostile atmosphere.
Yeah. And obviously, the game kind of followed the same pattern the entire duration of it, John. Sunderland, like we said, they had more possession, but again, just never really looked dangerous with it, never looked particularly threatening by that one chance for Pritchard. Made changes, some of which were interesting, I think, to say the least. Pritchard and Roberts coming off, Gooch coming off as well. Ahmad made his debut. Embleton and Diaku, who a lot of people have forgotten about because, quite frankly, he hasn't featured all season, I think, to be honest. I could be wrong on that one, but he certainly hasn't featured much. But I think the one argument is that, if you look at the window, the players we brought in, very young players, likes of Jewison Bennett, Edouard Michu, Abdullah Bar, are they going to be thrown into the starting 11? Absolutely not. They're not ready to play, for 90 minutes, not ready to be thrown into the deep end and expected to perform. But if you look at the bench, the players that we brought on yesterday, like Dan said earlier, there's no one there really that could come on and you think, all right, we might make a goal here. There's no one that has that ability to change a game, I don't think, from the bench that we had yesterday. And it's a question that I raised in the group chat, and obviously got different responses, and people will have different opinions on it. But yes, they are young players. Yes, they will need time to adapt to the league. But at the end of the day, if you're 1-0 down in a game, Jewison Bennett, yeah, he's 18 years old, but he's made 7 senior appearances for Costa Rica. He's ready to play World Cup football in November. There is not a chance that he's not ready to feature 10 minutes off a bench in a championship game and just see what he can do. No pressure, go out there. If we lose the game, we lose the game. We're already 1-0 down. Best case scenario, he comes on, makes a difference. We take a point out of that game. It's something that I've never really quite understood, that one.
Yeah, I think we're always going to be a little bit, reluctant. Mowbray's only just inside the door, so he's going to be relying on what the coaches have seen. And to be fair, the coaches probably haven't seen, anything of Bennett or Michu or Bar. And like we say, they are still young. They're in another country. It's going to be ultimately they seem like ones for the future, don't they? We're not really gonna chuck them in a deep end. Obviously, I'd like to see us be a little bit more bold. Like even if we, use them for, sounds weird, but use them for the home games. Let them sort of bed themselves in on them. If we're playing Rotherham, we're sort of 3-0 up. I'm sure you can bring on 1 or 2 for just go around, stroke the ball around, have a go, and ease your way in slowly. But it is a frustrating one, especially as we've gone with 3 of them when we could probably have swapped one of those out for a person who's played a lot of games, I don't know, in League One or the Championship, who can come in and just do a job that we need. Because as you say, we're looking at the bench. Obviously Diallo's probably the one who's most ready and looked okay. Obviously he's probably not on the same wavelength as our players and vice versa. But he's maybe one to watch. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with Diaku, because I probably would have got rid of him. Alex Neil didn't really fancy him. He wasn't in the squad, up until sort of 15 minutes before kickoff, and all of a sudden he's sort of given 15 minutes to play, but he wasn't trusted, by Alex Neil in any way. And they can pretend he's injured, all you like, because as soon as Alex Neil's gone, the injuries have all dried up all of a sudden. So he doesn't really trust that. And again, you go to the other players on the bench. I'm not really sure, Embleton is a player who's going to come on and change a game. I'm really not, and I do want to be, but I'm not really convinced by him. If he left in the summer, I wouldn't have been, too distraught about it. You want these players to come on and make a difference, and I know this is, this game's real isolation, but just simple things, coming on and be able to cross a ball into the box. And you're expecting Embleton, all right, he had probably a shot, which was quite a simple one, but the other cross, the keeper comes out, takes this thing out of the game, and it's still very much a frustrating one. But yeah, we've got to look to the bench to be a lot more, to come on and do the business. Obviously, normally we'd have Patrick Roberts to bring off the bench, and it's only him or Embleton who you'd say make a difference. So yeah, Obviously, it's going to be, what can Mowbray do on a training pitch? Are the youngsters ready? Are they good enough? Law of averages said that maybe one or two of them aren't going to be good enough. But it's one of those we've got to wait and see.
Yeah, and I'll go back to you again on this one as well, John. That obviously we've spoke about the recruitment model quite a lot in the past kind of 2 weeks. It is to sign young players. I think the average age of the players we brought in that Phil Smith said on Sky just before the game is, I think it was something like 20.1 or something like that. So you can see that we're bringing young players in, but if we're bringing these young players in and they are not ready to play for the first team, what is the point at a club like Sunderland? You look at clubs like Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, where they can absolutely get away with it because they've got players in the first team, they've got depth, come off the bench, they've got players in the under 23s that can come on and make a difference. So they've got time to bed these players in, and they're not relying on them to come on, change a game and play a big part in the season. I think Julian Alvarez is a good example at Man City, very young player from Argentina. They bought him, loaned him back out to Argentina to develop. But in the meantime, they had, the likes of Jesus. Obviously, they've got Haaland now. They've got so many other attacking players that they can afford that luxury of letting a player develop and come back when he's ready for the first team, whereas Sunderland don't. So having these players come in, if they're not ready to play for the first team now and might not be for the foreseeable, we are very short of players.
Yeah, we are. There must be some, if you're bringing in Bar, Abdullah Bar, and by all accounts his highlights look okay. Obviously I haven't really seen too much of him. I don't think any of us have. And then you're letting Winchester go. Whose decision is that? Because for me, I'd happily have Carl Winchester in the centre midfield, to come on for Corey Evans or for Dan Neil instead of him. And why is it, like you say, it's okay signing these players, but why are we signing like 4 of them? Michu has played for Paris Saint-Germain last season. He's played with Messi. He's played with Neymar, but he's not ready to come in and play in Armada. And we're not talking about, go straight in and start and flourish, but at least get in the squad and get him minutes. Even, yesterday, give him 10 minutes. Just get his foot inside the door. It might ignite something. It might trigger something. Obviously the Costa Rican one, it was telling in Neil's interview when he signed, he said, he's one for the future. Well, yes, we can build for the future. Building for the future is brilliant, but let's not let the long-term goals get in the way of the short-term goals as well. There has to be a balance.
If you're building for the future, you've got to build for the present as well. And based off the players that we've brought in, the words that have been said on them players, we are only building for the future and not building for the present time.
Yeah, it does. It does seem a little bit like that, and Speakman's come out and done a, sort of half another, sort of statement, put it out there, almost like defending it a little bit, which if he feels he has to come out and do that, or whatever, but we just want, the short-term goals to match the long-term goals. They have to marry in. We don't need to sign 4 youngsters. We needed probably 2 youngsters and 2 experienced players. God forbid Corey Evans pulls up, which has been known to happen, probably one of our best players this season. Who do we then look to put in midfield?
I think that's the thing as well, though. If you're not going to play the likes of Bar, Michu, Bennett, whoever, they're essentially our backup players at the minute. Like you say, if Corey Evans gets injured, you're then having to throw Bar in, who's not played yet, not made an appearance, not came on, not had any minutes. Then you are throwing him at the deep end. So again, like I say, if you had him on the bench yesterday, possibly a little bit too early, but especially on Saturday, give him 10 minutes, give him 15 minutes, get him used to it. And then if that happens, Corey Evans does get injured in a future game, he's experienced what it's like to play football in this league. He's experienced the physicality, the pace of the game. Throwing him in the deep end will be more of a risk than anything else.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. Are they ready for it? One bad performance, we know, can shut a player's career down at a club. If Michu comes on as an absolute shocker, there's going to be a hell of a reluctance for Mowbray, to put him in. I think we're going to have to get really, really desperate for them, to play. I think that's the way it's going. If Corey Evans did get injured, I think it'd be a case of putting Luke O'Nien in midfield. Again, not ideal, and putting Bailey Wright in the defence. And then we are, with Sirkin out, Elise's probably going to play in the back 3, you would have thought. And then, it is the kids or nothing after that, and that's where it leaves us. It leaves us short. Like we're saying, fair enough. Get some kids in. By all accounts, our kids in the academy are very good. So let's not try and block their pathways as well. But let's not, like we're saying, let's not let the long-term goals, affect the short term. They have to marry in.
Yeah. Well, it did finish 1-0, obviously, and now we will get into player ratings. And Dan, I'll start with you on Patterson. We'll try and get through these ones as quickly as we can.
I'd say 6. He saved what he needed to. He couldn't really do much about the goal, but some of the saves he did make were a bit wobbly, and probably could have done better with them.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I'll go for 6. Yeah, like Dan said, his saves were relatively good. His kicking recently is frustrating me a little bit. He's letting the players, press him quite quick. I think he just needs to pull his finger out a little bit there. But yeah, nothing to do with the goal. So yeah, I'll give him a 6.
Yeah. On to Lyndon Gooch, Dan.
Probably one of his poorer performances in recent times. As much as I love him, I'd probably give him a 5 because he got brought off early. A couple of dodgy tackles, and really poor crossing. So yeah.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, same 5. Dan summed it up perfectly for me.
Yeah. Luke 9 again, right side of the back 3. Go back to you for this one again, Dan.
Slightly at fault for the goal, but I thought he was one of our more awake and more enthusiastic players yesterday. He constantly got the ball and drove up and tried to get the clock turning and ticking over. But every time he drove forward, everyone was just stood still. So can't really fault him with that. A couple of good blocks, body on the line sometimes when he needed to, and a couple of good tackles. So probably be one of my only 7s that I'd give out.
Yeah. And John, for you?
Yeah, same. I'll go over 7. Yeah, he was one of the ones who, really did stand up and, and demand the ball a bit more especially in the second half. And, battled well against everything that came his way. Yeah, 7.
Yeah. It's especially as well with 09 as well. He's only small as well, but he was the only one that could really deal with their Muniz, who's like 6'5" or whatever he is. Danny Bart seemed to struggle against him. So fair play to him. He had someone much taller, much stronger against him, but he was still winning most balls, going up for headers and winning them. So he's really shocked me in this league. I thought he'd really struggle in the Championship, but he is. I mean, I met him personally, and the work and effort he puts in at the training ground, you can see why he's performing so well in this league. So he's really opened my eyes. I didn't think he'd do as well as he has, but he seems to be our only consistent performer.
Yeah, that is fair. Danny Bart in the middle. I thought he did fairly well throughout the game. Dan won headers, won the tackles, few fouls given away that probably didn't need to be given away. But overall, Danny Bart for you?
Probably a 6. He was more at fault for the goal. It ricocheted off his. No, he couldn't get to the ball. It was a really weird one. And I don't know. I don't think he dealt with Muniz as well as he could have done. He's a big centre back, and he didn't win a lot of headers against their forwards. So I'd probably go with a 6 or pushing 5. Honestly.
John for you?
Yeah, I'll go for 6. Yeah, I think he's probably set himself a standard this season of winning, everything. And last night we didn't really see him win as much or dominate as much as he should, against a striker who's only scored 1 goal. So yeah, I was a little bit frustrated with him.
Yeah. Well, Dennis Serkin obviously started the game, and he did go off about halfway through the second half, but during the game, don't think he had the best game compared to what we've usually seen from him, Dan.
Yeah, I agree. He is always one of the only people that we can rely on to really get forward and break the ranks down. And then he got injured, obviously. Whether that was fatigue because of all the minutes he's put in recently, or what, I don't know. But yeah, today was quite poor. I'd still give him a 6 because he did try and create and get forward, but the injury hampered all progress.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I'll probably go over just about a 6. He wasn't as influential as as he normally is. He's fairly decent in the air, which players try and target him, but he matches that up quite well. And it's obviously it's a shame he's injured. I don't know if it's him or Clark. I couldn't tell because they both look the same. Who I think in the second half, did 3, was it like overhead kicks to clear the ball? I don't know if it was him or Clark. So
yeah.
Oh, Clark. Okay, well, that's Sirkin. Yeah, you would have got a 7 for that, but you get 6 now.
On to said Jack Clark, Dan. Obviously, he was the best player on the pitch against Rotherham. Did everything that we know he's capable of. Good crossing the ball. Obviously, fantastic solo goal for him. Completely different player in the game last night. He couldn't cross a ball to save his life. Dispossessed far too easily. And very frustrating thing about Jack Clark, which he gets away with more often than not. But when he seems to drive towards our own box instead of just releasing the ball. And I think there was one time he played a ball across the in-yard area, and I think Muniz was about 2-3 inches away from just nicking the ball off him, and he's still on goal. So a little bit of frustration there, but luckily didn't come from anything. But again, crossing very poor. Jones had the beating of him every time, defensively and offensively. Just a very poor game for Jack Clark.
Yeah, I agree. I'd probably give him a 4. He did beat Jones a couple of times. A couple of times he sent Jones for a hot dog. He went one way, Jack Clark went the other. But then he got past Jones, and then the ball either went for a throw-in or it went out for a goal kick.
Yeah.
Or missed everyone, and they took the ball again. So it's like you can beat as many men as you want, but if you don't do anything with it after beating them all, then you might as well have saved the energy and not beat them. So I'd go with a 4 because, like I said, I don't know if he was still starstruck from his performance on Wednesday or if he was just shattered from putting in an absolute shift from Wednesday. But it just wasn't him today, and you could see that with how frustrated he was getting. He lost his head, getting angry at himself, and it feels like if something's not going, he's the kind of player to beat himself up all over it. And I think that's something that Tony Mowbray probably will be able to influence with himself and get that mentality sorted. That if something doesn't go your way, you get up, you get over it, and you keep going, until you score or you get an assist or something. So I think that's a moulding that Tony Mowbray will do, and time will give that. But yesterday, it just really, really wasn't his day.
Yeah, and obviously he'll have better games than he did yesterday, John. But just overall, every kind of aspect of his play was very, very poor.
Yeah, really, really bad game. To be fair, nothing really came off, and again, frustrating that he keeps turning back and running back with the ball sort of across the pitch a little bit. We need him to stay wide, and that's where he's most effective. And the one or the couple of times he did actually get through, end product was just awful after a goal and 2 assists. Last week. So yeah, bad day at the office, but we'll maybe let him off. But yeah, really, really poor from his standard.
Yeah. Into midfield, Daniel, starting with him, Dan. Or we'll go to John first.
I thought he had a really poor first half. There was a few times he did his classic mistake of too many touches in the final sort of third area, and he lost the ball. But thankfully, we had other players there to deal with it. Second half, I thought he was a bit brighter, and to be fair, he never stopped running. I mean, he never gave up. Just the quality wasn't there. A couple of times he had the ball driving forward towards their box and picked out the wrong pass, or the pass was slightly overshot or undercooked, or he should have gone right and it went left instead. He played some nice triangles with Roberts and Pritchard, etc. Though I've already given him a 5. It wasn't a great day for him. It wasn't. First half could have been a 1 in my opinion, but he sort of, because he never stopped running, he never stopped trying to make something happen, or he never stopped trying to get forward and drive through their midfield and attack. I'd probably give him a 5.
Yeah, as fair, John.
Yeah, I'll go over 5. We said earlier, first half was really poor. Somewhat of redemption maybe a little bit in the second half, but nothing nothing really came off. Obviously worked hard, but that's a given. But yeah, 5 and just needs to set himself a nice high standard and meet that because he's very good on the ball. But yeah, really poor last night.
Yeah, Corey Evans, Dan.
He did well against midfield, I'd say. There was a lot of times where he did that dirty work. He put a bit of a shift in. He won the ball back quite a lot, but at the same time, his passing was quite poor as well, especially in our own half or at the halfway line. He gave the ball away quite a lot, or sideways passing sort of went to their strikers and attackers, etc. So I'd probably give him a 6 because he did deal with a lot. But in general with the midfield, the clockwork that we normally see in the transitioning and switching around, it just didn't feel like it was happening. There was no pressing, etc. So probably a 6 because he was probably the best midfielder, but still not great.
Yeah, John, for you.
Yeah, same. I go for 6. Did a lot of the donkey work that we probably missed. I only saw him pop up 1 or 2 occasions, sort of pressing. But yeah, just a bit. I don't want to say anonymous, but sort of didn't really notice him.
Yeah, that is fair. On to the front 3, Dan, who quite frankly neither did too much. I don't think these 3 will take too long. But first of all, Alex Pritchard.
I thought that was one of his worst performances. He should have buried it in the first half. 10 minutes in, that would have set the game up completely different. And then after that, his passing was poor. Every time he got the ball, he'd look for a through ball that wasn't on, or he'd overhit it, or he would get tackled. He'd get the ball, he stood still with it and tried to find something rather than driving forward and trying to potentially even take on a couple of players. And then he got brought off as well early, which is never a good sign. I'd probably give him a 4 if I'm being really honest. I really didn't think he did he did anything special yesterday, and we're going to get that from him. We rely on him so much to be in that number 10 position and really making things work, and it just so happened that yesterday was one of his days.
Yeah. We'll just move on quickly to these last 2 players. Dan, Ellis Sims.
Ellis Sims brought the ball down well, bullied their centre backs a bit, but he's just no Ross Stewart. He really isn't. He doesn't have the work rate. He doesn't have the pace either to really beat men. We saw him getting behind. I think it was Dale Fry a couple of times, but he did nothing with it. And every time he shot, it was from the most obscure angle as well. I give him a 5 because he didn't really do much wrong, other than shoot from dodgy angles and put it 50 yards over the goal. But he's not going to be able to fill the shoes we need him to fill.
Yeah. And last but not least, Patrick Roberts obviously came in for Stewart at the last minute. So probably a bit leeway considering he wasn't prepared to start the game. But overall, for him.
To be fair to him, I thought he was quite bright. He had a lot of energy, a lot of pace. And especially with that Pritchard chance, he worked hard to get that ball back and then be the person that started that chance creation. He drove at the defence a lot as well, which worried them and caused some problems. But again, final product, he just couldn't get it off. He did well considering he probably wasn't prepared to start and hasn't had many minutes recently. So I'd give him a 6, but I mean, there's not much more he could do when a team just isn't playing well.
Yeah. Man of the match, I think we'll skip for this game. But anyway, Millwall is the next game on Saturday. Just quickly before we wrap it up, if you had to go over the prediction for that game, what would it be?
I mean, this is really tough to call. Millwall are a tough team to beat, and we could be potentially playing a completely different system. The optimism in me will say something like a scrappy 2-1 or a scrappy 1-0. But I could see it being a 1-1 or even a 1-0 away, a 1-0 Millwall win. So it could go either way. But I just know it'll be scrappy, it'll be tight, and it will really be a tough game.
Yeah. Well, whatever happens, we will, of course, get a preview out for that game on Saturday to get what the Millwall perspective of this game is. And then, of course, on the Sunday, we'll have another reaction out to talk about everything that happens during Saturday's game. At home to Millwall, of course, 3 o'clock kickoff. But until next time, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.